Carl Jung reveals the real reason you struggle with self-sabotage. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung's timeless words strike at the heart of self-sabotage. Have you ever found yourself repeating the same mistakes, even when you know better? You're not alone, and the reason may lie deep within your unconscious mind. In this video, we'll uncover the real cause of self-sabotage through the lens of Jungian psychology and spiritual wisdom. What patterns are secretly shaping your life, and how can you break free from them to unlock your highest potential? Comment below with your thoughts or experiences on self-sabotage, and let's grow together. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. 1. What is self-sabotage and why we do it? Self-sabotage is not a flaw in your character, nor is it simple procrastination or laziness. It's a pattern deeply rooted in the unconscious mind, one that Carl Jung believed arises from a misguided attempt at self-protection. When you begin to step outside your comfort zone, take risks, or approach real transformation, your psyche often pulls you back. Not because it wants you to fail, but because it has learned through past pain or conditioning that safety means staying small, predictable, and unseen. These behaviors show up in subtle yet powerful ways. You delay sending that important email. You pick a fight with someone you care about. You binge eat or overspend right after making progress toward your goals. And just when life begins to open up for you, that inner voice whispers, "You're not ready. You don't deserve this. Something will go wrong." It's not logic. It's fear disguised as logic. It's not your truth. It's the echo of wounds that haven't been healed. Carl Jung taught that unless we bring these unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, they will rule our lives. We will act out scripts we didn't write and wonder why we feel stuck. The shadow, the part of the psyche that contains all we reject or repress, becomes the puppeteer, and we play the role of saboteur without even realizing it. But the moment you shine light on these hidden parts, they lose their power to control you. Consider someone on the verge of real change. They've been offered a dream job, a beautiful relationship, or a creative breakthrough. Instead of stepping forward, they freeze. They doubt. They retreat. On the surface, it looks like hesitation. But deep down, it's the unconscious saying, "This is unknown." And unknown means unsafe. Even success can trigger sabotage if deep inside, you associate visibility or growth with pain. The unconscious mind isn't evil, it's ancient. It holds every memory, every emotional imprint, every protective mechanism you've ever needed to survive. But what once protected you may now be holding you back. The key is not to fight against it, but to understand it. When you stop judging your behavior and start asking, "What part of me is trying to be heard right now?" you begin to reclaim control. Self-sabotage fades when self-awareness rises. When you notice the pattern, question the fear, and offer yourself compassion, something powerful shifts. You no longer act out old wounds you start creating from truth. The journey requires courage, because facing your shadow means confronting pain. But it also brings clarity, strength, and the freedom to live as your whole self. Carl Jung believed true transformation is not about becoming someone else. It's about integrating all that you are. And when you embrace the part of you that's been scared to grow, you no longer need to sabotage your own joy. You become the conscious creator of your path. no longer held hostage by an invisible past. Have you ever caught yourself holding back right before something amazing could happen? If so, share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else recognize their own patterns. If not, comment, "I'm ready to break free," to commit to overcoming self-sabotage together. Let's support each other on this path to healing and growth. 2. Carl Jung's insight, the shadow. Carl Jung believed that the real reason we struggle with self-sabotage lies in the part of us called the shadow, a hidden aspect of our psyche made up of all the emotions, impulses, and traits we were told to reject as children. Maybe you were told not to cry, not to be angry, or not to be too loud or bold. Slowly, to fit in, to be accepted, you began suppressing those parts of yourself. But those parts didn't disappear. They simply sank into the unconscious, quietly shaping your behavior from the shadows. This shadow is not just a collection of negative traits. It's where your disowned brilliance lives. The passions you silenced, the confidence you buried, the creativity you tucked away because someone once said it was too much. Jung called this the gold in the dark, meaning the very parts of you you've rejected may be the most powerful. What you've locked away for years in shame or fear is also where your vitality and greatness are hiding. But if the shadow is ignored, it doesn't stay quiet. It starts showing up in self-sabotage. You delay a big project until the last moment. You push away people who love you. You reject good opportunities because you're secretly afraid of success. These aren't signs that you're broken. They are messages from your unconscious, your shadow saying, "See me." The more you suppress it, the more it controls you from behind the curtain. That's why Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about a moment when you felt you ruined something good. A relationship, a job, a chance to speak up. Most likely, it wasn't your conscious self that wanted to destroy it. It was a hidden belief that said, "You don't deserve this," or "You'll be abandoned if you succeed." These beliefs were born in your earliest years and became part of your inner script. The shadow doesn't destroy because it's evil. It disrupts because it's been exiled for too long. It's trying to come home. Healing doesn't mean deleting your shadow. It means sitting with it, listening, and welcoming it back into the light. The parts of you you've spent years avoiding, your anger, your fear, your shame, become less frightening when you look at them directly. And in doing so, they transform. Your anger becomes your boundary. Your fear becomes your discernment. Your shame becomes your compassion. That is spiritual wisdom in action, not running from the dark, but learning how to dance with it. Jung taught that real transformation comes not by pretending to be perfect, but by becoming whole. That means embracing both your light and your dark, your known self and your forgotten self. When you integrate the shadow, you stop fighting against yourself. You begin to move with clarity, power, and purpose, no longer ruled by hidden fears, but guided by deep self-awareness. The shadow loses its grip, not when you destroy it, but when you listen to it. And in listening, you reclaim your truth. Are you ready to face your shadow and reclaim your hidden power? If so, comment below. I embrace my shadow, to show your commitment to healing and self-discovery. 3. Early childhood conditioning and complexes. From early childhood, We are taught, often indirectly, which parts of ourselves are welcome and which are not. You may have been praised for being obedient, quiet, or helpful, and in turn, you learn to suppress anything that didn't earn approval. Anger, fear, sadness, even curiosity. Over time, these rejected parts don't disappear. They become buried in the unconscious, forming emotional clusters known as complexes. Carl Jung described complexes as the hidden patterns that run your life when you're not aware of them. They show up as the inner critic that whispers you're never good enough, or the fear of abandonment that keeps you clinging to the wrong people. They are not logical, and they don't care about your adult reasoning. They are emotional echoes from childhood, seeking resolution. This is why so many of us find ourselves stuck in painful cycles, repeating the same types of relationships, the same sabotaging behaviors, or the same failures just as we're on the edge of success. Jung called this repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate early wounds in hopes of finally healing them. If, for instance, your emotional needs were ignored as a child, you might keep finding yourself in situations where you feel invisible, not because you want to suffer, but because your psyche is still trying to solve an old problem. It's an emotional loop, disguised as fate, but truly born of unmet needs that have never been consciously addressed. These patterns are often mistaken for personality traits. You might say, "I just have trust issues," or "I'm afraid of commitment." But beneath those surface beliefs lies something far more significant. Your forgotten self, exiled long ago, still calling out to be acknowledged. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Spiritual awakening begins the moment you stop identifying with the story you've been repeating and begin to ask, what part of me is trying to speak through this pain? What makes this process transformative is not just self-awareness, but self-compassion. You cannot fight your way out of these patterns by force. You must meet them with understanding, like a parent soothing a frightened child. The fear, the jealousy, the shame, they are not enemies, they are messengers. And when you listen, truly listen, the patterns begin to soften. The grip loosens. You remember that you are more than your conditioning. You are not broken, you are incomplete, waiting to be made whole through the very wounds you've been taught to hide. Spiritual awakening, then, is not a moment of escape. It is a return to what has always been yours. Your right to feel fully, to live authentically, to act not from survival, but from sovereignty. The healing does not lie in avoiding the shadow, but in integrating it. And in doing so, self-sabotage becomes self-understanding, and pain becomes the path to freedom. If this message spoke to you, leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss content that helps you heal, grow, and thrive. Type in the comments, "I am healing my inner child," to affirm your journey toward emotional freedom and self-love. 4. The paradox of sabotage. It's a protective mechanism. Self-sabotage is not simply a personal flaw or weakness. It's often your psyche's quiet way of protecting you from something deeper. According to Carl Jung, many of the behaviors you label as self-defeating are actually subconscious attempts to maintain inner balance. This process is rooted in what Jung called enantiodromia, the tendency of the psyche to swing in the opposite direction when one extreme is overemphasized. When you overwork, overachieve, or suppress certain emotions, your unconscious reacts by pulling you back, not to harm you, but to protect your sense of wholeness. This reaction can take many forms: burnout, procrastination, emotional outbursts, or even physical illness. It's not sabotage in the way we usually understand it. It's more like your soul sounding the alarm. You may think you're breaking down, when in truth, you're being asked to slow down. You may interpret failure as weakness, when it might actually be an act of inner survival. Your unconscious is trying to bring balance where your conscious mind is chasing extremes. Take the example of a high-achieving entrepreneur who pushes themselves endlessly, feeding their identity on productivity. Their schedule is packed, their phone never silent, and their to-do list never ends. Eventually, they begin missing meetings, losing focus, or making avoidable mistakes. They beat themselves up for not being stronger. But what if those mistakes are actually messages? What if their psyche is creating friction to slow them down, to make them reconsider their priorities, or to restore a neglected emotional life? This is where Carl Jung's insights become essential. He didn't see the unconscious as a dumping ground for unwanted impulses. He saw it as a source of profound wisdom. When the ego is inflated or disconnected from the soul, the unconscious activates compensatory forces. That's why Jung said, the unconscious wants to flow into consciousness and be integrated. The very behaviors you consider destructive may be signs of that deeper movement. A modern example can be seen in someone who, after years of climbing the corporate ladder, starts feeling inexplicably lost or irritable. They begin turning down promotions, withdrawing from colleagues, or doubting their own abilities. From the outside, it may look like they're sabotaging their success, but inside, their true self is pushing against a life that no longer fits. They're not breaking, they're awakening. Their soul is rejecting a life that lacks authenticity. Self-sabotage, in this case, becomes a gateway to spiritual awakening. You must begin to ask, what part of me is tired of pretending? What truth have I buried under ambition or fear? What emotional wound have I ignored for too long? Self-sabotage often emerges when your inner and outer lives are no longer aligned. It's the signal flare of a soul in conflict. By observing it with compassion instead of shame, you allow deeper truths to surface. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that the psyche always seeks integration. When you suppress your needs, neglect your emotions, or chase goals that don't align with your inner truth, your unconscious resists not to punish you, but to pull you back into wholeness. That resistance may look like sabotage, but in reality, it's a sacred form of self-correction. By turning toward it and listening closely, you may uncover the very wisdom you've been searching for. If you're ready to embrace the deeper wisdom behind your patterns, comment below. I honor the balance within. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful insights like this. 5. Shadow work and individuation. Jung believed that the key to becoming a whole and authentic self lies not in perfection, but in integration. The parts of us we try to hide, our anger, our shame, our fears, don't disappear. They form what he called the shadow, a hidden realm of the unconscious where all our repressed emotions and denied traits live. Most people spend their lives trying to outrun their shadow, wearing masks to appear strong, good, or acceptable. But in doing so, they create internal division. The more we deny the shadow, the more power it gains. It shows up in self-sabotage, broken relationships, repeated patterns, and quiet suffering. True transformation begins when we stop suppressing these darker parts of ourselves and instead begin to meet them with compassion. To grow spiritually and emotionally, we must face what we've rejected within us, not with judgment, but with honesty and gentleness. That's where real strength lies, in turning toward our pain rather than away from it. This is the heart of spiritual wisdom, knowing that what you resist persists, but what you embrace, you can transform. When you listen to the voice beneath your anger or sadness, you'll often find an old wound still bleeding, still waiting to be seen. Healing is not about removing the pain, but allowing it to be heard, to breathe, to guide you back to your true self. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Every trigger, every overreaction, every insecurity is a doorway into deeper self-understanding. And yet, resistance to this work is natural. It's easier to blame external circumstances than to admit that some part of you is afraid of who you might become. As Jung once pointed out, many people fear their own potential more than they fear failure. Why? Because stepping into your highest self means letting go of everything you've built your identity around. The need to be liked, the fear of judgment, the belief that you're not enough. It means breaking free from the familiar discomfort of old stories and rewriting your narrative from a place of conscious choice. Individuation is not about becoming someone else, it's about returning to yourself. But that return requires courage. It means asking difficult questions and sitting with uncomfortable answers. It asks you to welcome not only your light, but your darkness. To understand that you are both. To realize that spiritual wisdom doesn't ask you to become perfect, it asks you to become real. And to be real, you must be whole. Whole means you have accepted your flaws, your rage, your tenderness, your power, all as sacred aspects of your human experience. This inner work is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong dialogue with your soul. But each time you choose awareness over avoidance, truth over illusion, wholeness over image, you take one step closer to freedom. Not the freedom that comes from escaping who you are, but the freedom that comes from embracing who you've always been. The shadow doesn't disappear. It becomes integrated. And when it does, it no longer controls you from the dark, it empowers you from within. Comment below. I choose to face my shadow if you're ready to embrace your whole self with courage and compassion. Let this be your first step toward true inner transformation and individuation. 6. Tools for shadow integration. Recurring dreams are not just random flickers of the mind. They are messengers from the unconscious, trying to break through the noise of everyday life. When certain themes appear again and again in your sleep, like being chased, losing control, or returning to the same place, it often signals a conflict buried deep within. These dreams are the voice of the shadow, calling for your attention. Keeping a journal beside your bed and writing down the emotions, symbols, and patterns that emerge can help you trace the roots of unresolved feelings or inner divides. Each dream is a riddle, one that reveals the parts of yourself you've long avoided. But some truths can't be unraveled with logic alone. That's where active imagination becomes essential. This is a process of inner dialogue, a conscious encounter with the unconscious. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and visualize the part of you that feels angry, afraid, or ashamed. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what it's afraid of. Let it speak. This isn't about inventing answers. It's about surrendering to the unknown inside you. The shadow is often desperate to be heard, and when you give it a voice, it starts to lose its power to sabotage you from behind the scenes. Expression, not suppression, is the path forward. That's why creative expression is such a powerful tool in shadow integration. When you write freely, paint spontaneously, or let your body move without control, something ancient wakes up inside you. You may find tears you didn't know were waiting, or stories from childhood rising like waves. This process is not about perfection. It's about honesty. Art bypasses the ego and speaks for the soul. And in that space, the shadow doesn't feel judged. It feels accepted. Carl Jung once said, "Art is a kind of innate drive that seizes a human being and makes him its instrument." When you create without filtering, you become a vessel for healing. To integrate the shadow fully, you must also develop a fierce commitment to self-reflection. Notice your emotional triggers. What makes you irrationally angry or uncomfortable? Who makes you feel envious, small, or deeply annoyed? These reactions are mirrors. Often, what we most reject in others is what we refuse to face within ourselves. The qualities you judge, neediness, arrogance, selfishness, are usually unacknowledged parts of your own psyche seeking reintegration. Every judgment is a doorway. Every irritation is an invitation. When you trace these emotional responses back to their source, you discover the blueprint of your shadow. This inner work is not easy, but it is the birthplace of spiritual awakening. When you begin to recognize the silent forces that have shaped your life, your patterns, your wounds, your fears, you stop reacting unconsciously. You reclaim your power. You stop being ruled by inner saboteurs and start living from a place of clarity and wholeness. Integration isn't about erasing your darkness. It's about making peace with it. Because only when the light meets the shadow can you truly awaken. If this message has resonated with your journey of self-discovery, comment below. I welcome my shadow with compassion and courage. Your healing begins the moment you stop running from yourself. Let's walk this path of inner integration together. 7. Psychological maturity is integration, not perfection. Psychological maturity isn't about striving for perfection. It's about embracing integration. To grow, you don't need to erase your flaws or pretend they don't exist. Real growth comes from being able to hold both your strength and your vulnerability, your confidence and your uncertainty, your light and your shadow. Carl Jung taught that the path to becoming a whole person, what he called individuation, requires you to face and integrate the parts of yourself you've been taught to hide or suppress. These aren't weaknesses to overcome, but keys to your inner truth. In a world obsessed with performance, self-optimization, and external success, it's easy to fall into the trap of appearing perfect while internally falling apart. Maya, a successful young woman, is a modern example. She had everything: a well-paying job, polished appearance, and a thriving online presence. But behind the scenes, she sabotaged her relationships, avoided intimacy, and felt chronically empty. It wasn't until she explored the parts of herself she had buried old wounds, unprocessed anger, and deep fears that she realized the cause of her pain. Like many of us, she wasn't broken. She was just divided. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The unconscious isn't just some distant realm. It's alive in your reactions, your triggers, your patterns, and especially your self-sabotage. The shadow, those unwanted emotions and traits you try to push away, gains more power the more you avoid it. But when you stop running and finally turn toward it, something powerful happens. It loses its grip. You begin to reclaim your energy and your clarity. Every hero must walk into the darkness before they rise. The shadow is not an obstacle to your path. It is the path. And just like in every myth or movie, the true transformation comes not from conquering the monster, but from recognizing that the monster was a part of you all along. Growth, then, is not about constant positivity or spiritual bypassing. It's about truth. It's about facing the discomfort and staying with it long enough for it to teach you something real. Integration is not a finish line. It's a practice. It means catching yourself when you're projecting your wounds onto others. It means staying curious about your own reactions instead of immediately judging them. It means forgiving yourself for not being perfect and choosing to show up with honesty instead. As you do this, the different parts of you, your fear, your ambition, your tenderness, your rage, begin to move from conflict into conversation. That's where true power begins. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom shows us that we don't need to become someone else. We need to return to ourselves fully and unapologetically. The pieces we once called broken are actually sacred. And the maturity we long for isn't about being flawless. It's about being whole. To affirm your commitment to true growth, not perfection, declare it today. Comment below, "I choose integration," to honor your path toward authenticity and inspire others to embrace their whole selves, shadow and all. Remember, self-sabotage isn't just a flaw in your willpower. It's often a deeper signal from the unconscious, asking you to heal, grow, and realign with your true self. As Carl Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If today's message spoke to something hidden within you, don't let it fade away. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new step on your journey toward transformation. Awakening made you tired of people? Carl Jung says it's a sign of this deeper shift. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt drained by small talk, overwhelmed in crowds, or simply tired of people who no longer resonate with your soul? If so, you're not alone and you're not broken. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we're diving into what Carl Jung called a deeper shift in consciousness, one that often makes awakened souls feel detached from the world around them. This isn't social fatigue, it's spiritual evolution. Drop a comment if you've experienced this too, and let's explore together why your sensitivity is not a flaw, but a sign of inner transformation. 1. Carl Jung's concept of individuation explains loneliness. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred and often painful journey of becoming who you truly are by releasing who the world conditioned you to be. But no one tells you how raw it feels. It's not a grand revelation filled with light and joy. It's a slow shedding, a quiet unraveling. As the false self dissolves along with all the identities, roles, and performances you adopted to feel safe, you begin to lose your sense of belonging in the very spaces that once defined you. Relationships shift. The people who once felt like home now feel foreign. You hear their words, but they echo hollow in your chest. You're not angry with them. You're not better than them. You've just stopped betraying your own soul to fit into a life that no longer reflects your truth. That's what nobody prepares you for the grief that comes with spiritual awakening, because it's not just about gaining awareness. It's about watching everything that once held you together begin to fall apart. You'll sit among old friends and feel like a stranger. You'll smile because you remember how, not because you feel like it. And all the while, your soul quietly whispers for depth, for truth, for something real. You'll begin to notice that the things you used to brush off now feel unbearable, and the discomfort you used to numb now screams to be heard. But in that discomfort, spiritual wisdom blooms. Carl Jung believed this internal death was not the end, but the beginning proof that your soul is waking up. And when your soul begins to wake up, your entire energy recalibrates. You stop chasing what drains you. You lose interest in empty conversations, approval seeking, and the exhausting need to be understood. It's not arrogance, it's survival. You pull back, not because you've grown cold, but because the noise has become unbearable. Your spirit longs for silence, for honesty, for peace. You begin to realize that solitude is not the same as loneliness. It's where you meet yourself again, where your nervous system, fried from years of pleasing, proving, and performing, finally begins to rest. And in that stillness, you start to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. I once knew a woman who was the life of every room. She was praised for her brightness, her kindness, her ability to carry everyone else's weight. But she told me that every time she left a gathering, she felt emptier than before. So one day, she stopped. She deleted the group chats. She started journaling, meditating, walking alone without her phone. Friends accused her of being distant, cold, and selfish. But in truth, she was simply coming home to herself. She wasn't losing her light. She was reclaiming it. That's what awakening looks like. It's subtle, often invisible to the outside world, but it changes everything. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege doesn't come without cost. It requires the death of who you are not. It asks you to question everything, your friendships, your values, even your own emotions. Suddenly, the love you once clung to reveals itself as codependency. The laughter you once shared feels like armor. And the life you worked so hard to build no longer fits the soul that's emerging. You don't just mourn people. You mourn versions of yourself. The one who tolerated chaos, who swallowed her truth, who abandoned herself in the name of harmony. You grieve for the years spent sleeping through life, numb and disconnected, chasing validation instead of freedom. And yet, in that grief, there is sacred beauty. Every tear waters the roots of a more authentic existence. Every quiet moment becomes a bridge back to your essence. And as you shed layers, what once felt like loneliness becomes solitude. What once felt like silence becomes sanctuary. What once felt like loss becomes the most honest freedom you've ever known. Spiritual wisdom teaches you to hold the paradox to feel whole but alone, clear but unseen, heavy but more alive than ever. The ache in your heart is not something to fix. It's space being cleared for something holy. You are being called into higher alignment, toward people who don't drain you, but fill you, toward conversations that don't distract, but heal, toward love that doesn't require a performance, but welcomes your presence. And though the path is narrow, though your heart may ache and your mind may doubt, every step you take toward truth is a step back to your soul. That's the real awakening, not a dream, not a vision, but a deep remembering that who you truly are was never lost, only buried beneath the noise. Comment below. I choose authenticity. If you're ready to embrace your individuation journey and let go of who you were told to be. 2. Awakening changes your frequency and creates emotional distance. Spiritual awakening shifts something deep within you, not just your thoughts or beliefs, but your entire energetic frequency. Suddenly, the world feels different. What once felt familiar now feels foreign. Conversations that used to bring comfort now feel repetitive and draining. You try to engage, to stay present, but your body tightens and your spirit resists. It's not that you're judging anyone. It's not that you think you're above them, but you can't deny that something has changed. You're no longer aligned with the emotional wavelength you once shared with others, and this creates an invisible yet undeniable distance. The people around you haven't necessarily changed, but you have. The shift is subtle, yet seismic. You no longer find satisfaction in gossip, complaints, or small talk. It feels like noise, like static. Your soul craves depth, meaning, truth. You begin to notice how often people speak without really saying anything. You listen, but the words pass through you. There's no resonance, no spark, no nourishment. You're not being cold or closed off. You're simply attuning to a different frequency, one that values inner presence over outer performance. This emotional distance isn't a flaw or a phase. It's part of the process. A natural byproduct of awakening is detachment from the familiar, from the roles you used to play, from the relationships that once defined you. You're not pushing people away. You're being pulled inward. Your energy is calling you home to yourself. And in that return, there's an inevitable solitude. The noise quiets, the room empties, and for a while, it might feel like a loss. But what you're actually experiencing is alignment. Carl Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." When you awaken, your priorities change. Your emotional language deepens. And not everyone speaks it. That's what creates the ache. The realization that most of the world is still operating on autopilot, while you've begun to question everything. You see through illusions. You feel the weight behind the words. You sense what's not being said. And you can't go back to pretending it doesn't matter. You start to notice who drains you and who nourishes you, who listens just to respond and who listens to understand, who mirrors your old self and who reflects the version you're becoming. The space between those two selves, the old you and the emerging you, feels like a void. But it's not emptiness. It's sacred space. It's the cocoon between identities, the stillness before transformation. And even though it's uncomfortable, it's necessary. Your spirit is recalibrating. Your nervous system is learning peace. Your boundaries are becoming clearer. You no longer tolerate chaos masked as connection. You no longer chase validation in places that never truly saw you. This isn't bitterness. It's clarity. This isn't detachment. It's discernment. You're not isolating yourself. you're protecting your frequency. You're making room for new connections that match your depth, your values, your truth. Let the silence stretch. Let the loneliness teach you. Let the disconnection refine you. Because you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. And on the other side of this shift, you will find people who feel like home. You will speak, and you'll be heard. You will feel, and you'll be met. Until then, trust the distance. It's not a punishment. It's a sign you're awakening. Have you ever noticed your relationship shifting after a spiritual awakening? If so, share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone feel less alone. And if you're still navigating that emotional distance, comment below. I'm learning to honor my new frequency, to affirm your journey. Let's grow together in this space of truth and transformation. 3. The real drain is not people. It's pretending to be someone you're not. You're not tired because people are toxic. You're tired because your soul is done performing. You've worn masks for so long, smiling when you didn't feel like it, nodding along to stay polite, laughing at jokes that didn't land in your heart. It's not that the world changed overnight. It's that you've stopped abandoning yourself just to belong. The real drain isn't the noise around you. It's the silence inside you every time you betray your truth to maintain the peace. Carl Jung once said that individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self, demands the breakdown of who you thought you had to be. This shift isn't comfortable. In fact, it's painfully disruptive. You feel it in your chest when a friend calls to gossip and your body tightens. You feel it in your throat when someone asks how you are and you want to tell the truth, but smile instead. The tiredness comes not from them, but from you pretending everything still fits when it doesn't. You don't need less connection. You need less pretending. The nervous system, trained for years to seek safety and approval, now fights against your evolution. It pulls you back into old roles. The agreeable one, the fixer, the strong one who never complains. But now, each time you step into those roles, something inside you winces. It's because your spirit has already moved on, even if your habits haven't caught up. There's nothing wrong with you for needing space. There's nothing wrong with you for canceling plans, for choosing solitude over small talk, for saying no without explanation. That's not selfish. It's sacred. You're creating room for your real self to breathe. And yes, it will confuse people. They've grown attached to the version of you that performed well, stayed quiet, and showed up no matter what it cost. But you've paid those costs with your peace, and your spirit is tired of the debt. This shift will feel lonely at first, but that loneliness isn't emptiness, it's clarity. You're not withdrawing because you hate people. You're pausing because you love yourself enough to stop leaking energy into situations that no longer align. You're not distancing to punish others. You're reclaiming the parts of you that have been buried beneath years of expectations, roles, and emotional labor. Carl Jung reminds us that the deeper you go into your own unconscious, the more you begin to live in alignment with your true nature. And as you shed what's false, you also shed the crowds that were drawn to the performance, not the person. What's left isn't emptiness, it's freedom. It's the beginning of genuine connection, rooted in truth, not in survival. You're not tired of people, you're tired of pretending. And that distinction changes everything. If this message speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt drained not by people, but by the pressure to be someone you're not? Let's talk about it below and continue uncovering what it really means to live in your truth. 4. Shadow work deepens self-awareness and sensitivity. Shadow work is not some mystical theory reserved for spiritual elitists. It is the raw, unfiltered reality of what happens when your soul begins to awaken. It doesn't come gently. It comes like a storm, ripping through everything you thought you knew about yourself. Suddenly, you're not just expanding into light. You're being dragged into the corners you spent years avoiding. The shadow isn't made of evil. It's made of everything you were told to hide. Your rage, your shame, your guilt, your unmet needs, your tears behind closed doors. As the layers peel back, you realize that what you thought was your personality was actually your protection. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's exactly what's unfolding. You're not just waking up, you're remembering who you were before the world told you to forget. As you begin to walk this path, a strange thing happens. You start to feel everything, not just your emotions, but everyone else's too. You sit across from someone and you hear their words, but your soul picks up something else entirely. You hear joy, but feel fear. You see a smile, but sense anxiety. You listen to complaints, but underneath it all, you feel a hunger for love, for peace, for understanding. You're not becoming sensitive, you're becoming honest. This level of awareness is a side effect of spiritual depth. The more you see through your own mask, the more clearly you see through everyone else's. And that's when the exhaustion begins. The parties feel shallow. The small talk feels like static. The crowds feel like poison. It's not social anxiety, it's soul recognition. Your spirit is no longer interested in noise. It's craving nourishment. You've outgrown surfaces and begun craving the ocean floor. You sit in a room full of people, but feel completely alone, not because you lack connection, but because your soul refuses to settle for anything fake. You begin walking away, not because you're cold, but because your nervous system demands stillness. You no longer have the energy to pretend, to perform, to please. You crave solitude like medicine. You begin saying no without guilt. You choose silence over chaos, truth over acceptance, discomfort over betrayal. And that's not pride, it's spiritual clarity. This is the soul reclaiming its power. You're not trying to escape others, you're trying to return to yourself. Shadow integration doesn't mean becoming flawless. It means facing your flaws without shame. You stop blaming. You stop outsourcing your worth. You look your wounds in the face and hold them like lost children returning home. You understand your triggers, not to suppress them, but to learn from them. Every time you're hurt, you lean in rather than lash out. Every time you're misunderstood, you speak less and listen more. You're learning that healing isn't loud, it's sacred. And this inner transformation unlocks something even more profound: compassion. You no longer look at people and see enemies or irritants. You see survival. You see fear masquerading as arrogance, wounds dressed up as ego. You see how people hide not to deceive, but to endure. And your heart opens. You no longer take things personally because you realize that very little was ever about you. You begin to soften not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Even the ones who hurt you become mirrors, not to reflect your pain, but to reveal your power. You realize that every soul is fighting its own battle, and most of them are fighting blind. And somehow, knowing that makes you kinder. Your awakening stops being a personal achievement and becomes a quiet revolution. Your soul no longer wants to dominate, it wants to liberate. And so, you move through the world, less reactive, more rooted, less attached, more aware. This is what transformation feels like, not glamorous, not easy, but deeply real. Because in a world addicted to performance, your authenticity becomes your rebellion. And the soul, once silenced, finally begins to sing. Do you feel your sensitivity growing as your self-awareness deepens? Shadow work is not weakness, it's courage. If you recognize this transformation within yourself, affirm it in the comments below. I embrace my shadow and grow in truth. 5. Your nervous system is evolving alongside your consciousness. Awakening isn't just something that happens in your mind. It's not just about new thoughts or spiritual beliefs. It runs deeper than that into your nervous system, your physical body, and your energetic field. As your consciousness rises, your body begins to respond. You start to notice how certain environments make you tense, how your heart races in rooms filled with noise or surface-level chatter, and how exhausted you feel after even small conversations. This is not a weakness or social anxiety. This is your nervous system evolving to meet the sensitivity of your expanding awareness. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that pain often manifests physically before your mind can make sense of it. Your system is becoming more attuned to energy, to frequency, to authenticity. What once felt normal, gossip, chaos, meaningless busyness, now feels unbearable. Not because you're superior or judgmental, but because you're no longer aligned with it. The people and places that don't match your new vibration feel heavy. You're not becoming distant, you're becoming precise. This shift in sensitivity can be confusing at first. It often feels like loneliness, like you're pulling away from everything you once knew. But in reality, your body is trying to protect you from overstimulation as it learns to operate in a higher state of consciousness. Your nervous system is shedding years, maybe even decades, of noise and conditioning. And just like muscles after a workout, it needs time to rest and adjust. There's a woman named Elena who used to be deeply social, always surrounded by people. After a retreat that awakened something within her, she came back home and felt like a stranger in her own life. Her usual routines exhausted her. Her friends' conversations felt shallow. She tried to force herself to engage like she used to, but her body resisted. Eventually, she stopped resisting too. She started honoring her new rhythm. And in that silence, she found herself again. Carl Jung's teachings on individuation remind us that becoming whole means breaking away from what is false. And sometimes, what is false isn't just a mask we wear, it's the energy we've tolerated. It's the relationships we've outgrown. It's the noise we once called normal. So when your nervous system begins to reject what you used to accept, it's not regression, it's refinement. It's your soul making space for truth. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a compass. It tells you when something feels off, even if you can't explain it. It guides you away from the loud and shallow, toward the deep and real. And as you keep honoring that truth, even when it makes you tired, even when it makes you lonely, you're building a kind of strength that the world rarely sees: energetic integrity. This process of awakening through the body is sacred. It requires grace, patience, and trust. Your nervous system is not betraying you. It's guiding you toward peace, toward clarity, toward a life that no longer drains you, but nourishes you. If this message resonates with your journey, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. Your nervous system is evolving for your highest good. Comment below: I am aligning with my new energetic self, to affirm your transformation and inspire others on the same path. 6. You begin attracting more authentic, energetically aligned relationships. As you begin to heal, something deep within you shifts. You no longer crave attention from the wrong people. You stop trying to impress, entertain, or prove yourself. Without realizing it, your energy becomes clearer, more honest, and that honesty begins to speak louder than words. Suddenly, you find yourself uninterested in shallow conversations and emotionally unavailable people. You begin to crave something real, something that speaks to your soul, not your wounds. This is a sacred moment in your spiritual awakening, the moment your energy starts filtering out anything that was only meant to feed your survival patterns. You're no longer running on the need to belong at any cost. You're remembering who you are without the masks. But this shift doesn't come without discomfort. When you stop performing, some people will leave. Not because you've changed too much, but because the relationship was never built on truth. It was built on your performance. As that performance drops, so does the illusion of closeness. This is where solitude steps in, not as a punishment, but as preparation. The silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where your intuition becomes louder than your fear. It's where you learn the difference between being alone and being aligned. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." You're not lonely. You're just no longer interested in communicating in a language that betrays your soul. During this sacred solitude, your energy field recalibrates. You're no longer broadcasting the frequency of fear, approval-seeking, or insecurity. You're radiating something much more powerful: wholeness. And wholeness doesn't beg, it attracts. You begin to notice that some people no longer text you back. Some invitations stop coming. And even though your mind may panic, your soul knows this is the clearing before the blessing. It's the pruning of old energies so that something more aligned can take root. And what comes next is not louder, but deeper. Real connection, real recognition, real resonance. The people who begin to appear feel different. Their presence is calming. Their words don't drain you. They restore you. You no longer feel like you have to shrink or edit yourself to be understood. These new relationships don't demand performance. They welcome presence. You feel safe, not because they complete you, but because they reflect the completeness you've discovered within. This is spiritual wisdom in motion, the unfolding of relationships that reflect your healed state, not your wounded self. Let this process take its time. Let the empty spaces stretch. Don't fill the void with noise. Don't run back to what hurt you just because it's familiar. Trust that your frequency is doing the work for you now. You're not just attracting people anymore, you're attracting reflections. And the clearer you become, the clearer they'll be. This isn't loneliness. This is alignment. This isn't a loss. This is liberation. And this isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of something real, something sacred, something your soul has been waiting for your entire life. If this message speaks to your soul, take a deep breath and declare it now. I am ready for aligned, soul-nourishing connections. I trust what is meant for me will find me. 7. True awakening means wholeness, not superiority. Spiritual awakening is not about becoming superior to others. It's about becoming whole within yourself. The real journey begins when you stop trying to escape your pain and start embracing it as part of your story. Your spiritual path is not meant to make you feel above anyone else. That feeling of being more conscious, more aware, or more enlightened than others is not true wisdom. It's the trap of the spiritual ego. And the ego doesn't disappear just because you meditate or say affirmations. It simply puts on a new mask, often a holier one. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That means the parts of you that you've ignored, rejected, or tried to spiritually bypass, the shame, the guilt, the inner child still grieving, these are not blocks to awakening. They are the doorway. The real transformation happens not when you rise above your humanity, but when you integrate it. You stop chasing the idea of perfection and start honoring your wounds as sacred. When you come into wholeness, your energy becomes stable. You no longer feel the need to prove anything. You are no longer triggered by people who don't get it, because you realize they're walking their own path, just like you once did. You don't need to control outcomes or convince anyone to change. Instead, your peace speaks for itself. You begin to attract people not through effort, but through presence. Not through status, but through sincerity. You also begin to see that the roles you once played, the people pleaser, the overachiever, the fixer, were survival tactics, not your truth. The more you awaken, the less interested you become in playing those roles. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from clarity. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. Environments that once felt like home now feel misaligned. And it's not because you're better than others. It's because you're no longer abandoning yourself to belong. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't look dramatic. It's subtle. You find yourself sitting in silence more. You feel less urgency to be understood. You're not running away from the world, but you're no longer ruled by it either. You become rooted in something deeper, your own essence. And from this grounded state, you emit a calm, loving, magnetic energy. Some will be drawn to it. Others will misunderstand it. But you no longer take it personally. You've stopped living to be received. You're living to be real. Wholeness is when your inner child, your present self, and your higher self are all sitting at the same table, finally seen, finally heard, finally loved. You are not fragmented. You are not pretending. You are simply being. And in that being, there is power. A quiet, unshakable power. Not because you have risen above the world, but because you have descended into the depths of your own soul and found peace even there. That is the essence of true spiritual awakening. To affirm your dedication to true awakening, declare your commitment to inner wholeness, not superiority. Comment below. I choose wholeness over ego. To honor your journey, and inspire others to walk this path with humility, compassion, and truth. And maybe that's the part no one tells you, that awakening doesn't always feel like light and love at first. Sometimes it feels like distance, like silence, like pulling away from the noise so you can finally hear your own soul. But this shift isn't disconnection, it's realignment. You're not losing people, you're finding yourself. If this message spoke to something deep within you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth, healing, and awakening. Your journey is sacred, and we're honored to walk it with you.